Cheryl from Tutoring with Cheryl, and I am here to talk to you about why your kids aren't reading and what you can do about it. So, if you have a child who just has zero interest in reading, there could be an underlying problem associated with your child that maybe it hasn't been identified yet. And a lot of times when I meet with students and their parents are talking to me about this, I do a quick assessment and I can quickly discover that they have an underlying problem with missing phonics skills. So in my tutoring practice, I really support literacy skills by diving deep into the phonics skills that they're missing. And many times they maybe aren't dyslexic, but they have a lot of problems that dyslexic students face, and so we that is a big challenge. So we work on identifying letters, letter sounds, blending letter sounds together, and then as we build confidence with easier words, we start to build on the longer words or the harder words. For example, I had a lesson this morning with a third grader, and this third grader is really just a beginning reader, and so they're working on short vowel sounds, and we're working on not just doing the short vowel sounds with the reading, but also, and that's called the decoding, but we're also working on encoding, where we're building those sounds and we're mapping those sounds out by listening. So we might say mat, at, and then I'll say you tap it out, at. Now let's put 3 lines on your board and let's spell mat, at. MAT. Show me how you did it. We'll fix anything with letter formation while we're working on it because that's important. If you're a teacher, you know, right? And then we'll move on. And so those simple little steps that you take when they're younger really help to build confidence when they're older. Now, third grade isn't really young, right? We're kind of middle of grade school. So what I'm going to say is if you've got a kindergarten or a first grader who's already behind in reading, I want you to take action right away. Like these are simple things that you can be doing at home. But if there's a more serious problem and you're like, well, we've tried that. My child's not reading. Maybe you're a homeschool family who just cannot get your child to read, or maybe your child goes to a private school. I've worked with parents that have had this actually happen to them. Child's in a private school, they're going to the school to get extra help. The school's really kind of just not wanting to do anything because they don't have to, and the parents want to be really proactive and they're taking them in to get some testing, and they're coming back and saying, no, my child has this diagnosis, and then they're kind of forcing the hand of the private school to get the support. Like, I can help walk you through that because I've helped parents walk through that and they've gotten the help that they need. So, just to let you know that these things do happen, and I do help parents with that. So, yeah, I just want you to know that that is an actual thing that actually happens, and it can feel really frustrating when it's happening to you. Okay, so let's talk more about getting kids into books that they might like, or why won't they want to read a book? Okay, so you're in the library and the kid comes over, your child comes over and says, yeah, I want to read this book, The Little Red Hen. And you're like, yeah, let's get it. But your child's still working on short vowel sounds, and you open it up and you're like, well, there's not that many words on this page. My child should be able to read this page, right? And so you open this up. Well, if you open this book up and you start to look at the words that are in this book, these words are harder words. We have the word frisky. A little red hen lived in a house. Well, if they don't know O-U-S, says S-E, says ouse, as in house, mouse, grouse, whatever, they're not going to be able to read that word. With a frisky dog, well, if they don't know frisky with the Y at the end says E, and they don't know the blend of ski, they're not going to be able to read this book. But maybe you can do a shared read. And I just did this week with a student that I have in New York State who is he's past the beginning stages of reading. So he's able to read a lot of it, but when he sees a page like this, he has a lot of anxiety. So I read this part of the page and then we turned this part and he just kept reading this. And he was so excited. Well, then when we were all done, I said, okay, let's talk about what happened in this book. This book is a fable and it teaches us a lesson. What was the lesson that the characters learned in the story? So you can start to build confidence. So we talked about the characters in the story and what would you do differently and how could you be a helper? And it was really good. So just because they pick up a picture book does not mean that they can read it. And secondly, if it's too hard for them, provide that support at home so that they can read it. Okay, so picture books are great, but sometimes picture books are actually written at like third, fourth, fifth, sixth grade level. We think that you walk in the library and there's all these picture books and the kids want to get them, but sometimes they can't read them. So we want to steer our kids towards things that they can read. And I've mentioned this before. I'm going to mention it again. And you can actually go over to www.webothread.com and I'll put it in the comments afterwards, okay? You can find these books, but they're so good. Our local librarian at the little library just in the north of me has these. Thanks, Rosa. They are so great. And I know I've talked about these books before, but there's a parent side and there's a child side. And so you just find the one that fits your child and what can they read, and then you support them as they go through it, and they're going to feel really confident reading these books, and maybe eventually they'll be able to read both sides of the books. But this is how we build confidence. We find books that our kids can like and enjoy, and these illustrations in here really are great. They're simple, but they're nice and fun to look at, and yeah, I think that this company has done a really good job. So go check those books out. Now, something else for our younger readers, and I have some stuff for our older readers as well, so stay tuned. I believe I talked at another point about these books, and they're called phonics books, and they go through the letters of a sound. So this is talking all about the letter M, and the title of this book is Malls. And so this is a nonfiction story because, okay, so we've got our fiction story and we've got our nonfiction story. Guess what? Kids need to be able to tell the difference, so you can do that at your house, okay? Or I can do that with them as well. And so we're talking about this story, the malls, and they're going to learn all about what a mall is, and there's a simplified text on here. But something that might really surprise you is when you look at the text in the book, look to see how the A's and the G's are written. I love this because they nailed it. That's how we're going to write this when we write it down on paper. And so look, they're not going to get stuck on that funny G and the funny A that show up, and they just don't know what to do because they've never seen it written like that. Even T's and H's, when they using the Helvetica font, it's actually really confusing for students that struggle to read things that are on the page. So we want to simplify the text as much as possible. So that would be good. Okay, I'm going to move on to our older readers. Sometimes we have kids that can't find a good book. They're good readers, but they can't find a book that they like. And so just today, I shared both of these books with two boys. Okay, because I kind of think sometimes boys are a little bit more reluctant to read than girls are. And I'm trying not to be stereotypical, but what I've really found is my boys really just are hesitant to read in. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe you just haven't found what you want. I actually shared this with one of my girls as well. And I shared this with two fifth graders and two incoming eighth graders this week. Now, this book is let's see, does it say what is this? Is actually a grade level 4 book, but anybody can read this. Like, you guys, if you're an adult, you can read this book. It's called Alcatraz and the Evil Librarians. And I'm just going to read the back of it. It says, Alcatraz Smedry has an incredible talent for breaking things. He's hardly a hero, but he receives a bag of sand on his 13th birthday, and his life takes a bizarre turn. This is no ordinary bag of sand, and it is quickly stolen by the cult of evil librarians who are taking over the world by spreading misinformation and suppressing truth. Alcatraz must stop them by infiltrating the local library armed with nothing but eyeglasses and a talent for klutziness. This is a funny book. And as a matter of fact, I think they've even made a movie about it. And I know that Brandon Sanderson has written more books, and I believe he wrote a sequel to this book. But I read this book a few years ago when I was still in the classroom. My students loved it. It was so funny. But there's enough suspense in it to keep them wanting to read. And then your child will have to be able to read, text that looks like this. But if you're looking for something that's kind of sci-fi-ish, fantasy, well, I would say it's more science fiction than anything. But comedy and kind of mystery all wrapped up in one, this would be a great book. Now, I just talked to my 8th grade student, and he's very athletic, and we've been working with him on morphology and looking at Greek and Latin roots and building his confidence with what those mean and how to spell them and how to read them and how to use them in sentences. And improving his writing and things like that, but he's not reading any books this summer. I said, well, you're close enough to your library. You can actually walk to your library. So, two great books that I would recommend would be, and really look more at the author than anything. Tim Green has a series of books that he's written about baseball players, okay? And they're all written about youth baseball players. And again, they're pretty heavy on the text. I don't know if it says the grade level for this, but I would put this book like fourth through sixth grade and beyond. And just because, again, an adult could read this book, okay? And I know that the student that I'm currently working with would pick up this book and do just fine with this book. But we want to keep the reading going over the summer. And so Force Out is a great book by Tim Green, but again, he's got some other ones, and I'll just hold this up here and you can check those out as well. And you can find those at your local library. So, yes, you can buy them, but you can also go and borrow them. So, support that local library. Go there so that those doors stay open and you can keep a library in your neighborhood because someday you might need it. Okay. All right. And then the last one that's, and I'll pick up, actually, I'll say two more. So, I've got this book by Mike Lupica, and he has written some books about different types of like sports stories, and this one is about the $1 million throw, and again, about a young boy who's going to try to save his family by making this $1 million throw at the game, and if he makes the $1 million throw, it will actually improve the life of his family. Don't we all need some extra money now and some inspiration? So I'm going to leave that one there. Now I've got one other idea, and it's in this bag right here, and it's a nonfiction book. And I used to have my young boys in fifth grade and sixth grade would come back from the library, and they would have the Atlas for Kids, or Almanac, excuse me, for kids. And I only could find one up to 2024 at the library that I was at, but I think there's safety in getting an almanac, because you would never read an almanac from beginning to end. And if you don't know what an almanac is, it's just basically a categorization of a bunch of facts, and it's kind of nice because you can learn how to use the index at the back. And let me see if this one has a glossary in it. I don't know that it does. Sometimes they include glossaries. Nope, this one doesn't have a glossary, but it's going to have different things in there that kids like. Like there's a whole section on outer space. This is very non-threatening for a child because they can just come in here and look at the pictures, and then if they want to read about it, they can read about it. You might find things about prehistoric timelines, or maybe you'll find funny things like this page has, I can't remember, like a Mad Lib type thing on it. Of course, they can't fill it out, but they could do some copy work and they could write it down and fill it in. Copy work is really important because our kids learn different things. Maybe you'll see a little laugh aloud story or some tongue twisters. So these are the types of books that kids really like, and this is a great introduction to nonfiction books if you're looking for something nonfiction. All right, so my goal in my private tutoring practice is to really get kids to be confident readers, writers, and spellers, because we want them to show up to their classrooms feeling confident. And so I'm really going to encourage you that if your child is stuck and they need some extra help, to visit my website. I'm going to plop that into the comments section before I end this, and then I'll come back at the end of the conversation and add the website for the We Both Read, and you guys can check that out as well. So thank you so much for joining me today, and if you have any questions, reach out to me. I'm happy to help any students that suffer from dyslexia or any students that are a little or a lot behind in their reading, writing, and spelling.